Okay, in this session, we're going to jump straight in and talk about self-sabotage because it's something that you'll see in your clients. And so we're going to understand why clients do it. So obviously we have a better understanding of what's going on for them first and foremost. And then we're going to talk about, most importantly, the kind of things that we can do as a coach to help our clients with these self-sabotaging behaviours. Okay, so what is self-sabotage then? Well, an official definition is when we deliberately hinder our own success and well-being by undermining personal goals and values. But what that might look like in our clients, for example, is things like, they're being good all through the week, but then come the weekend, they are going out with their mates or they're having takeaways. Maybe self-sabotage can look like them starting to ghost you and not engaging in the process. That idea as well of procrastination, like always waiting for Monday to come round or putting things off to a later date, waiting for the right time could be a form of self-sabotage. And things like even when they're in the gym, if they've got a final set to do, they're cutting their set short or they're not quite doing the right number of reps. So there are loads of different ways that people can self-sabotage. The all-important question: why? Why do people do this when they know that it's not going to help them get towards their goal? Why, as humans, don't we just do what makes us feel good and what we want to do? Plenty of reasons, as you would have imagined. Human beings, we are super complex, so we are going to explore some of these in a little bit more detail. But here are some of the reasons. So the first one, fear of failure. Fear of uncertainty. As humans, we don't like things that aren't sure. Fear of success, which might seem like an odd one. Lack of belief. And then the final one then is cognitive dissonance. Like I said, we're now going to explore these in a little bit more detail. Okay, so let's go to fear of failure and why might this get in the way of somebody achieving their goals. Ultimately, if somebody has a fear of failure, what ends up happening is when they don't do something, so they've failed at a behaviour, that might be going to the gym or setting within a particular calorie target, in their mind, that is the same thing as I am a failure. So I failed at this behaviour, I am a failure. So rather than being able to see that it's just the behaviour that they might not have succeeded at, it has this blow to their self-worth. This is most likely to happen if your clients have previously tried to diet and lose weight and they haven't been successful. So they have failed in the past. And so the more and more you try something and the more you failed, that fear can build up and up and up. It's a form of self-preservation, basically, based on that. Yeah, if somebody has failed a number of times, it doesn't feel good to fail. It doesn't feel good to do it multiple times. So self-sabotaging, kind of avoiding actually failing by making it happen, is a form of self-preservation. It's linked to self-esteem, as we can see here, because if when they do fail something, they're going to think that they're a failure, of course they're going to want to avoid doing the behaviour because it's going to make them feel bad about themselves. Okay, so it's such a really smart thing that our brain does to protect us from not feeling good about ourselves. And ultimately then what is happening is that their failure of certain behaviours confirms beliefs they have about themselves. So if they were to try something and they were to fail at it, that just confirms, see, I knew I was going to fail. I knew I couldn't do it. And that is super painful. So then we introduce this idea of self-handicapping, which is what it's called in the literature. Okay. And that introduces the idea of a win-win situation. So self-handicapping is when you basically, we're going to go into it a bit more, but it's when you come up with a reason why you can't do something. So then if you are not successful, you can blame it on the reason rather than yourself. So it kind of supports your self-esteem in that sense. But if you do succeed, then you also win. So it's a win-win situation. Yeah. If you don't do a good job, you're blaming it on the excuse. So you don't feel like your self-esteem takes a hit. But if you do win, then you've won. And that's great. So like I said, self-handicapping is the term used in the literature. And there's some more information here. But it's that idea of putting that barrier in the way to kind of make sure that you don't succeed, or you withdraw effort, and that helps you to justify your failure. And so this is what we call self-sabotaging, right? We're purposely not doing stuff to avoid potentially doing it and failing. So when we start seeing it through this lens of kind of it is self-protection, we can kind of judge our clients less and we can understand kind of where they're coming from. Like you said, it's a natural human instinct that we do to preserve our self-esteem. All right, so the next reason then, a fear of success. What is a fear of success, and is that even a thing? So ultimately, if somebody's on the journey with you and things are going quite well and they start self-sabotaging, well, that could be because they're fearful of success. So when somebody succeeds at something, so they do lose weight, or they do maintain their health and fitness behaviours, what will that mean? What will that mean for them? What will that mean for their identity? And what will that mean for their life moving forward? If they've always seen themselves as the person who is out of shape, it means they're going to have to view themselves in a different light. It might mean that they have higher expectations of themselves, or that other people have higher expectations of them. So there is definitely a cost, if you like, to succeeding that people can could be subconsciously keeping them back from getting to where they want to get to. What would they have to leave behind? So maybe they're going to have to leave behind, like I said, the old identity of themselves, or leave behind excuses that were serving them in the past, but they can't carry with them anymore. There's a lot of things that you have to leave behind to be a new person, and that can be quite challenging. There also becomes more to lose. So as soon as you've obtained something, there then becomes the fear that you might lose it or go backwards, which is a really genuine fear for a lot of people. Sometimes when people are pursuing their goals, they're doing approach goals. So this is when we are moving towards achieving something. But then once we get closer or we achieve it, we can then engage in avoidance goals. So an avoidance goal then is, rather than trying to get something, it's trying not to lose it. And this switch from approach to avoidance has increased those feelings of stress. And this can also lead to people self-sabotaging, because they go from, chasing after this thing they really want to suddenly being like, oh my goodness, I don't want to gain the weight. And that's when it starts bringing in those self-sabotaging behaviours. Maybe there's a perception there of not being deserving as they're getting closer to their goal, or maybe they're not even getting close to their goal. Maybe there's that feeling of, do I really deserve this? Do I deserve to be confident? Do I deserve to be happy? Do I deserve to achieve my goals? The next one then is this idea of the fear of uncertainty. We kind of touched on this very briefly at the start, this idea that humans hate uncertainty. Okay, it's so difficult for us as humans, and we would much rather be in a certain situation that's bad than an uncertain situation that may possibly be good. It's very uncomfortable. So self-sabotage is almost a way of gaining control. If a person is thinking, oh, do you know what? I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to succeed. By self-sabotaging, they gain some certainty and control over the outcome, even if it's not the outcome that they want. It's that kind of will I, won't I? Whereas actually self-sabotaging guarantees the outcome. And it's worth saying here, right, this isn't conscious. They aren't actively thinking about, doing this so that they have certainty. It's just something that our minds and bodies are doing. The next one then is the idea of, lack of belief. Sometimes people self-sabotage because they have low self-efficacy, or they have low belief that they can actually achieve it. And we know that self-efficacy or lack of belief is a massive predictor of a person's successful outcomes. People who believe that they can do something are more likely to persist in the face of difficulties. They're more likely to take on challenging tasks, and we know they're more likely to actually achieve the thing they're set out for. So if a person doesn't believe they can do it, why would they even try? What would be the point? And keep working hard when you don't actually think it's going to get you to where you want to go. So maybe you might see that in your clients. So you're looking at some of this so far and you're thinking, I'm not sure what's going on for that person. Maybe that's a bit of lack of belief. Now, hopefully then that's given you a bit of a background. Are your clients doing it because there's a fear of failure, fear of success? Is it about the uncertainty thing? Or is there that idea in there about low self-efficacy or low self-belief? We're going to talk now a little bit about how we help clients to manage self-sabotage. Now, there's no expectation that you're going to stop your clients from self-sabotaging constantly, but there are some useful tools for us to know about, right? Ultimately, that's by understanding, well, what is at the heart of all of these reasons? A fear of failure, a fear of uncertainty, a fear of success. Well, at the heart of these are emotions, right? And mostly challenging emotions like fear or anxiety, stress, worry, frustration. These are all kind of what people would describe as uncomfortable emotions. And so at the heart of all of these are people's ability to kind of manage and experience challenging emotions. And ultimately, it's not about getting rid of these emotions. It's about making space and being more comfortable experiencing them. Because if we can experience the fear that we may not succeed, but continue to behave in the ways that we want to anyway, that is going to help us lead to success, rather than saying, oh, we shouldn't feel fear, because that's not realistic. We're not going to suddenly get people just to not feel fearful about these things. So when we think about it like this, that their behavior is actually the response to avoiding uncomfortable emotions, which is natural. Again, who of us wants to experience those things? It allows us to take a new approach to things. Okay, we can look at self-sabotage in a different way and we can approach it slightly differently. First step, as with everything, is that awareness piece. So helping clients to become aware, firstly, when they actually are self-sabotaging, then to help them with awareness over their reasoning why. Can they identify out of those reasons we spoke about, which ones are the reasons for them? So like we said, this is about them noticing what's going on and noticing in a non-judgmental way. You'll see this is quite a mindfulness-based approach. Okay, it's kind of that meditative element or that mindfulness element to it, which is the noticing of when these thoughts and feelings occur, noticing when these behaviours are occurring, not having judgment, but just being aware that they're there. The next one is really important. Okay, so you've brought awareness to that those thoughts and behaviours are there. You also need to know what direction that you want to go in so that you can do an alternative action to the one that clients are currently doing. So this looks like making sure that they've done goal setting, which you already would have done, but it's about keeping it front and center, helping them to constantly be back in touch with their goals, whether that be on a daily basis or weekly basis, whatever it is, it being front of mind so that they know what decision to make when these kind of thoughts and feelings, these self-sabotage thoughts start arising for them. So we're going to make the goal visible, we want to make the goal simple, and we make it specific. Okay, so really making it specific so that they can have these things with them in their mind for when they start having the self-sabotage thoughts. And so if at the heart of this then is a fear of failure or a lack of self-belief, then part of it is going to be helping clients to build their confidence. So there's a few things we can do here. And I'm sure you're doing most of these already. So the idea of scaffolding, which is when we, at the start, provide loads of support and we give them tasks that we know that they can do. Then over time, we kind of remove a bit of support as they're able to kind of do the thing themselves. And it slowly gets more and more challenging. Also, helping them to get evidence that they can do these things. So the part of that, getting the evidence, is them actually doing it. So making sure we're making it easy enough for them to succeed and succeed frequently and often. We make the challenge sometimes that because we want to rush the client's success, we end up giving them loads of behaviours to do. And ultimately, it's going to be really hard for them to keep up. Actually, the easier we can make it, the more success they can kind of get under their belt, that's going to help them to build up that confidence, to build the momentum, to allow them to do more challenging things down the road. And also the key part here, which is what your check-ins are for, but we can also do it more frequently, that is getting them to reflect on their wins and not just vaguely, kind of what's gone well this week, really getting them to think about like what it is that they've done. So that enables them to feel the confidence and to kind of bank it as evidence for the future when maybe they're not feeling as confident. Now, all of these fit really nicely into this new approach that we were talking about. What you could ask your clients to do, for example, is if they are self-sabotaging or they've mentioned to you that they are, you can get them to kind of identify what is the reason. Can they pinpoint it? Can you help them with this? Then to write down the acts of self-preservation. So what are the behaviours that they're doing to keep themselves safe that actually might not be that helpful? So they might have a fear of failure, and the act of self-preservation to that might be overeating on a weekend to sabotage the effort across the week. And then what they can do after that is to write down an alternative action. What is it they might want to do instead? Maybe they would need to acknowledge that they were experiencing fear. Maybe they'd be able to self-soothe in some way, and then maybe they can continue to move towards what matters. And the more specific we can get there so they know how to move and they know what matters, that's really important. Then we have, if their reason is fear of success, maybe they start making progress and they cancel with you as their coach, or they start ghosting you. Maybe the alternate action could be to acknowledge what they're experiencing, to speak with you about their fears, and to move again towards what matters. Okay, so that could be a little exercise that you get your clients to do. Now, we mentioned before about, knowing that emotions are the basis of this, or having difficulty experiencing challenging emotions. And we talked about a new approach. This moves really nicely onto ACT, or a concept from ACT, which is acceptance commitment therapy. And that is the choice point. Now, effectively what the choice point is in every situation, we have a choice. We have the choice to move away from what matters to us, or the choice to move toward what matters to us. Okay. Now, whether we move away or toward depends on if we get hooked by our thoughts. So those self-sabotage thoughts, the ones that tell you that you're going to fail or fearing that you're not good enough. If those thoughts get stuck, we're going to move away. If we're able to kind of unhook from those thoughts, we're going to be able to take toward moves. So for example, here, maybe a client steps on the scales and the weight hasn't moved. And in that kicks in that fear of failure. They're thinking, well, what is the point of this? I'm never going to succeed. And then you're kind of at the choice point there, right? If they get hooked to those thoughts and they start believing that, yeah, I'm not going to be able to succeed, then they're going to make away moves. And so an away move is, it's going to provide them with some short-term relief. It's going to relieve them of that fear that they're currently experiencing or the uncertainty. But it's going to lead to that long-term regret, okay? So it's going to do something in the short term that's going to make them feel better. But if they zoom out at their life, if they continuously make away moves, they're going to feel dissatisfied that they're not achieving their goals. Okay, this is that kind of fuck it point, They've had that situation, they're having those thoughts, they get hooked to their thoughts and they're like, fuck it, what's the point? Okay, eat whatever, I'm going to skip the gym. Whereas in that situation, a toward move would be to continue whatever behaviours you've asked them to do as a coach, focus on the next important action. It would be to kind of self-soothe. So we're not going to ignore those emotions. That's not how emotions work. We're not suppressing them and positive thinking. We're going to acknowledge that we feel nervous and scared. And instead we're going to, give ourselves what we need in that situation. So if we feel nervous and scared, maybe we'll be able to reach out to our coach and say, hey, look, I'm worried that we're not moving in any direction here. Am I doing enough? Okay. And of course, another toward move would be to increase effort. So hopefully in this quick session, you've learned a little bit more of an understanding as to why your clients might be self-sabotaging. And you've got some tools here or some new ways of reframing it that can help your clients to make less away moves and make more toward moves.